So first up, we're going to be talking about classic comic books and classic horror comics. We're going to go all the way back to the beginning pre-Marvel Comics era. We're talking about when Stan Lee was still writing anthologies before it even was Timely Comics. We have a lot of really cool characters that just got their roots, no pun intended, such as
Groot.
Groot, exactly. A lot of people are didn't really know this. Groot has actually been around since like the inception of the modern comic book. He was originally the monster from Planet X, and here it is. What you were saying?
Well, yeah. So he came as an invader to enslave humanity and presented himself. I am the creature from Planet X, and who dare defy me?
Yeah,
So-
which is really kind of cool because if you're paying attention to the Easter eggs in the Guardians of the Galaxy, you'll catch that when they do the scanner, they'll say Planet Origin Unknown Planet X, and it's actually a nod to the original comic book. I don't think it was even until more recently, within the past like 15 years or so, that they actually started writing him as a sympathetic character.
Well, because the team that we know of, the Guardians of the Galaxy, didn't become a thing until 2008.
Right.
So, yeah, Groot really didn't get mainstream attention until then, and
Yeah.
so he's really like the Groot that we see in that book isn't even like that's just one of his people.
Right.
And so if you
Well, it's the same thing with Hulk.
yeah.
That there was a different Hulk before the Hulk. They went back and dug into their old repertoire.
Yeah.
I think what is the name of the monster that he became? They eventually brought the original Hulk into the Hulk comic books.
Yeah, they eventually brought him in. I can't remember what he went by originally.
He was a white fluffy Hulk.
Yeah.
So these are like some really amazingly cool background characters. Like I was telling you, one of my favorites is, of course, Ant-Man, who we all think of as a superhero. Originally was meant to be an actual horror character. It was a scientist who shrunk himself down and got hunted down and trapped inside of an anthill with giant ants, you know, in the vein of the Fruit of the Gods or Them or those kind of old classic
Honey,
horror
I
movies.
Shrunk the Kids.
And I Shrunk the Kids.
Yeah, you know, those
Those
classic
like
horror
classic
movies.
horror movies.
Right. And a lot of really cool, interesting things came out of those times. I mean, the old anthology comic books were actually the direct link between the Penny Dreadfuls and the modern comic book as we know it. And so they're very historically important. And you only had the two kinds. You only had the vigilante, what did they call them back in the day? The crime fighters are called... the Masked Crusader type characters, yeah. The Green Hornet and those kind of things, and the Shadow, and then of course monster characters, and even the Shadow had a little bit of the monster into him. And then it got really, really big when it hit off into the 60s, and the evolution of the characters was when Doctor Strange was created. And we had the 60s drug subculture, we had the hippie movement. A lot of those people were embracing characters who had Eastern and magical philosophies and elements into them, and a lot of artists really got big at that time. And one of Greg's favorites, you were telling us about
Bernie Wrightson.
Yeah.
Bernie Wrightson was an amazing artist. He did a lot of stuff. He did some amazing work on Swamp Thing for DC. He did some amazing work for Marvel. He did Creepy Magazine, Creep Show, the movie. He actually did a bunch of art for the Creep Show movie, both of them, I believe. He did just a lot of really amazing work. I've got a picture that I want to show you where he actually did a picture of Spider-Man with like this tentacle monster coming after him. Really gorgeous
awesome.
stuff. But one of the
It's like,
latest
it's my
things.
dream.
Yeah, one of the
I-
latest
like
things.
John
is,
was talking about how those were the artists that inspired you.
Yeah, it was like I've been drawing since I was like 3, but then whenever I started finding comic books that were like horror comic books, I was like, oh my god, this is awesome. This is what I want to draw. This is what I want to do. And it was just, you know, it just took off from there. Though this is like I started drawing my own comic book horror stuff until my parents were just like, what are you drawing?
Even in the Tales from the Dark Side movie
Yeah.
with Ted Danson, they actually used comic book illustrations to put it through. A lot of people don't realize those anthologies came directly from their sources, and it was a big explosion of horror comic books. I mean, that's a hard time of modern readers to visualize that, you know, because superheroes are so synonymous with comic books now, that there was a time that, you know, even Westerns were like the top sellers, you know, but then in the 60s, it was just like horror comics were like prevalent in everything. A lot of the superheroes, we're talking about like Swamp Thing, we're talking about Werewolf by Night, or some of those characters were inspired in the horror genre to keep up with the changing times. So
I do want to say real quick that you should pick up Bernie Wrightson's Frankenstein. It's freaking brilliant. The art in there, the line work that he did with
you
inking,
had a fun little
it's just
factoid.
gorgeous.
Shannon.
His Frankenstein's monster was actually rated #2 scariest monster in comics of all time.
See,
So,
well, there you go.
yeah.
And great influence and artists and everything. And look, I was asking, I don't think Greg has seen them yet, but the Universal Monsters released a new set of DVDs, and Alex Ross did an amazing job of like recreating and painting these black and white portraits of each of these characters, and you can definitely tell the influences of artists like Bernie Wrightson. So, to this day, that almost we're going on close to 100 years later, and they're still influencing. So
God, I feel like that's insane.
I know.
Like, it's so
It's hard
crazy
to
to
think
think that it's been like 100 years.
I
and all this
know,
stuff.
I know.